وتعمل صالحا نؤتها أجرها مرتين وأعتدنا لها رزقا كريما
يقنت منكن لله ورسوله وتعمل صالحا نؤتها أجرها مرتين وأعتدنا لها رزقا كريما.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على سيدنا Muhammad وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. All praise be to Allah Almighty, and peace be upon His beloved Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Dear brothers and sisters, dear viewers, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Welcome to this series, a series of pioneer women in Islam. We're talking about those great women in Islam. There's great women who sacrificed for Islam. There's great women who are an example of sacrifice, who have an example of piety, an example of righteousness, an example of wisdom, an example of knowledge. These women that we constantly always hear about men and companion of the men, or the men companion and the male companions. We talk about the prophets and messengers and the all men. We talk about scholars and most of them are men. We talk about warriors and most of them are men. We talk about imams and they are men. But this time we want to talk about those women. Doesn't Islam have women who are also to be great companions? Yes, we do. Then we have, as Muslims, women who also used to be great scholars. Yes, we do. Then we have women who are also an example of piety and righteousness. Yes, we do. Not we have one or two, we have many, alhamdulillah. Our Islam honors the woman as much as it honors the man. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He says, Inna akramakum inda Allahi atqakum. That the one that fears Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala most is the most honorable to Allah. The most honorable one to Allah, the most respectful one to Allah is the one that fears Allah most. The closest one to Allah is the one that fears Allah most. It's not about your gender, it's not about you being a man or a woman, it's not about you being Arab or non-Arab, it's not about your race, it's not about your nationality, it's about your taqwa, it's about your piety, it's about your righteousness. And alhamdulillah, Allah blessed this ummah with great women who are an example to the men. Again, they're an example to the men before they are an example to the women. They're an example to every single human being. They're an example in their righteousness. They're an example in their piety. They're an example in their taqwa. They're an example in their worship. They're an example in their sacrifice. They're an example in their knowledge. And today, inshallah, we want to talk about another woman who is a great example of sacrifice. A great example when it comes to giving for the sake of Allah Azza wa Jal. A great example when it comes to sacrificing what you love most. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He says, لَن تَنَالُوا الْبِرَّ حَتَّى تُنْفِقُوا مِمَّا تُحِبُّونَ. You would never achieve and obtain the high level of piety. You would never ever obtain true righteousness and piety until you sacrifice what you love most. You would never obtain the high level of piety and righteousness until you sacrifice what you love most. If you want to be a true believer and you want Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to see you as a true believer, you need to sacrifice what you love most. Not things on the side. Not that we sacrifice something that we don't want. Not that we sacrifice the extra dollar or cent. We sacrifice what we love most. We give for Allah what we love most. And today, this great woman, this pioneer woman in Islam, she's a great example of a verse like that, who sacrificed what she loved most. She sacrificed her own children for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. She sacrificed her most beloved children for Allah Almighty. She is Al-Khansa. Al-Khansa. Al-Khansa is a known, respectful Arab woman and a companion. And why I said an Arab woman? She was a poet. And she was one of the elite poets. She was one of the most elite female poets, that the male poets used to respect her for her poetry. She used to say very, very intense and eloquent poetry. She used to say very, very strong Arabic poetry. And that's why she was respected amongst the Arabs because of her poetry. And the Arabs respect poets because of their poetry, because of the words. And when we talk about Arabic poetry, we're talking about very intense meanings. And Al-Khansa radiyallahu ta'ala anha, not only that she was a poet, but she was also a companion. a companion of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wasallam. She embraced Islam, she followed the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam, she supported the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wasallam, and she continued to support the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam. Her original name is Tumadir. Her original name is Tumadir bint Amr radiyallahu ta'ala anha, a great companion and a great believer who continued to believe in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and sacrifice for the sake of Allah. She has a lot of poetry, as I mentioned, and her poetry is used as a reference for the Arabic language. The Arabic scholars will turn to her poetry as a reference to understand certain meanings and terms from her poetry, because she was very elite and very strong in the poetry. And she is known for her great sacrifice. As she was known for her poetry and eloquence in the Arabic language, she was also known for her sacrifice. What sacrifice are we talking about? A sacrifice that you rarely hear a woman sacrificing the way she sacrificed. Al-Khansa radiallahu ta'ala anha had 4 children. She had 4 sons. Those 4 sons like every other son, but they were righteous children, which makes the mother more attached to her children. When you have a son, you are attached to them. But when they are a righteous son, you become a lot more attached to them. These 4 children, these 4 sons of Khansa, they were righteous, they were pious. That they wanted to offer something for Islam. So they had nothing else to offer for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala except their lives. And during the battle of Al-Qadisiyah, when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wanted to destroy the superpower country on the eastern side, which is Persia, when the Muslims stood against the Persians, when the Muslim army stood against the Persian army, where there was only 36,000 believers fighting over 300,000 Persians. 36,000 Muslims fighting over 300,000 Persians. But at the end, it's always the truth will prevail and the word of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will be victorious. When you fight for Allah and do something for Allah, you will never lose, you will always be victorious. And Al-Khansa radiyallahu ta'ala anha, she had those 4 sons, and only 4 sons. And if she had a 5th son, she was also sacrificing for the sake of Allah. If she had another 10 children, she'll wish that she had more to give for the sake of Allah Almighty. So before the day of Qadisiyah, when her children were about to go on the battlefield, and going on a battlefield, that there is a very small chance of them turning and returning back home. Most likely they'll go and never come back. Did that mother say, children, don't go, stay with me? No, 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 I'd rather you stay alive. No, 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 she told her children, she gathered 4 of them, her sons. She gathered 4 of her children, and she said to them, oh children, as you are aware, that tomorrow you'll be facing a battle, fighting for the sake of Allah, fighting to uphold the deen of Allah, fighting to uphold the religion of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And there's a bigger chance that you'll go into this battlefield and never come back. Oh children, fight and continue fighting for the sake of Allah until you give your soul cheaply for the sake of Allah. Give it cheap for Allah Azza wa Jal. Don't look at your soul, it's something big that you are giving for Allah. Look at it as something small that you give for the sake of Allah. Because whatever you give for the sake of Allah is always little in comparison to what we should be giving for the sake of Allah. She said, oh children, that tomorrow you'll be facing this battle. And you go into this battlefield. Make sure you fight bravely for the sake of Allah, to uphold the deen of Allah, to protect Islam and for the sake of Islam. And they went, each one of them fighting, taking the advice of their mother. Each one of them fighting for the sake of Allah and taking the advice of their righteous mother. Until the first one fell dead. And she said, Alhamdulillah. The second one fell dead. She said, Alhamdulillah. The third one fell dead. She said, Alhamdulillah. The fourth one, she said, the fourth one fell dead. She said, Alhamdulillah, that Allah had honored me with their martyrdom. Alhamdulillah. I thank Allah, the one that honored me as a mother with my children to die as martyrs. Allahu Akbar. What kind of iman is that? What kind of a belief is that? What kind of righteousness is that? She receives the news that 4 of her sons and only sons passed away. And she says, Alhamdulillah. Alhamdulillah, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala had honored me, that they died as martyrs, and Allah will gather me with them in the paradise. This is the true believer. This is the true mother, the one that wants goodness for her children, not just to see her children with a lot of money, not just to see her children with education, not to see her children getting married, and not to see her children having children, but the true believer wants the best for their children, not only in this world, but the hereafter. And this is Al-Khansa. Al-Khansa knew that what's best for her children is to die for Islam, so when they are resurrected in the hereafter, they enter the paradise with her mother. And that's the true joy. The true joy is in the paradise. The true happiness is in the paradise. The true success is in the paradise. 4 of her children would die for the sake of Allah. And not that one of them dies, then she is grieved and sad over one of them until she's over it, then the other one dies. 4 of them, one after the other, die, and she receives the news, and her reaction is, Alhamdulillah, that Allah had honored me to be the mother of those martyrs. Allah had honored me to be the mother of those who died for the sake of Allah, and Allah will gather me and them in the paradise. This is the Khansa. This is the example. This is the type of woman that we want. This is the type of believers that we want, that will always sacrifice for Allah, we give for Allah, and we're not hesitant. Allah wants us to give for Him, and Allah wants us to sacrifice for Him without being hesitant. And Allah says, لَن تَنَالُوا الْبِرَّ حَتَّى تُنْفِقُوا مِمَّا تُحِبُّونَ. You would never obtain righteousness and piety until you sacrifice what you love most, until you give up what you love most, until you sacrifice for Allah, until you give for Allah, and not to hesitate to give for Allah. We are so attached to this world, and we are so attached to the materials of this world, that we find it to be too big and expensive to give to Allah Azza wa Jal. A believer gives everything, including their lives, for the sake of Allah, and they find it too little for what they give for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam says, I wish that I could die for the sake of Allah, fighting for the sake of Allah on the battlefield. Then Allah resurrects me again, then I fight again and die for the sake of Allah. Then Allah resurrects me again, then die and fight for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and die, and Allah Azza wa Jalla resurrects me again and again. Because the only thing, the only one that in the hereafter, the only person in the hereafter that will wish to come back into this world is the shaheed. Why? He will wish to come back into this world, sacrifice more for Allah and give more for Allah, so he could get more of the rewards that Allah had promised for the shaheed. And this is the Khansa. The Khansa radiallahu ta'ala anha, if she could not die in the path of Allah, she encouraged her 4 children to die in the path of Allah. And when they did, she said, Alhamdulillah, Alhamdulillah, this is from Allah. What an honor! What an honor! Can I get better honor than my children to be those who fight for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and die for the sake of Allah? So when I stand in front of Allah with my children, we all enter the paradise. This is what the believer wants. A believer is always aiming for the paradise. The believer's goal, the believer's objective is always the paradise. I always aim for the paradise. Not this dunya. This dunya, we're only travelers in this world. This dunya is only a bridge to the paradise. But unfortunately, some people want to live on the bridge and forget what's after the bridge. Some people want to reside in this dunya and forget about the akhirah. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He says, all those who believe, why? When Allah tells you strive in His path, you grab so tight onto this world. أَرَضِيتُم بِالْحَيَاةِ الدُّنْيَا مِنَ الْآخِرَةِ فَمَا مَتَاعُ الْحَيَاةِ الدُّنْيَا فِي الْآخِرَةِ إِلَّا قَلِيلٌ. Do you accept this world over the hereafter? You exchange the love of the hereafter with the love of this world? You love this dunya over the hereafter. Allah says, فَمَا مَتَاعُ الْحَيَاةِ الدُّنْيَا فِي الْآخِرَةِ إِلَّا قَلِيلٌ. The luxury and the comfort of this world is nowhere near the hereafter. The mu'min aims for the hereafter. And the mu'min will do anything to get to the paradise, even if he gives his life, even if he gives his wealth, even if he gives his own children, as the Khansa did. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give us this understanding. Be with us insha'Allah more on other episodes on pioneer women in Islam. Another great woman like Al-Khansa that insha'Allah we'll talk about more. Jazakumullah khairan for listening, and be in the care of Allah. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
ومن يقنت منكن لله ورسوله وتعمل صالحا نؤتها أجرها مرتين وأعتدنا لها رزقا كريما.
يقنت منكن لله ورسوله وتعمل صالحا نؤتها أجرها مرتين وأعتدنا لها رزقا كريما.
كن لله ورسوله وتعمل صالحا نؤتها أجرها